My name is Ann Haag, and we're here today to talk about how to enhance your Gmail user experience. I am the practice management advisor here at the Chicago Bar Association, and I know that so many people use Gmail or Gsuite, which we'll talk about the difference in just a minute. But yeah, I know that so many people use it, and I use it personally. And the more I read about it, the more I realize there are so many ways to take advantage of it and make it a lot more streamlined and effective. So this is kind of going to be a tip style presentation. I have included materials for you to download. They include full page slides so that you can get a good close-up view of the screenshots. They usually have like arrows or directions with them. And I also included the notes the slides with notes so that if you want to check out the links that I'm going to reference throughout, or sometimes I go into more detail with the directions. So please feel free to download those and check them out. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. In the materials, I linked to a couple websites on this first slide. They're just websites that I use to create the materials. So if you're interested, they include a lot of tips that I didn't necessarily include. So if you're really into this and you want to learn more, that's a good place to start. There are so many articles out there online. If you just type into Google Gmail user tips or something like that, there will be so many. It'll keep you occupied for days. So first I want to talk about the difference between Gmail and Gsuite. If you're paying for Gmail, you're using Gsuite. Gsuite includes Gmail and an array of other apps. If you aren't paying, you're just using Gmail. So Gmail is a piece of Gsuite, but it's a freestanding, free piece of the puzzle also. So the most obvious benefit that comes from using the paid version, Gsuite, is the suite of services that come with it. These include custom business email, so you can link it to your domain so that it looks a little bit more professional than having an email that just goes to @gmail.com. You get unlimited group email addresses, meaning that if your firm wants to set up a info account, info@whateverfirm.com, or different teams within the firm, you can set up a lot of mailboxes for groups. Those are all free and unlimited. You get twice the amount of cloud storage across Gmail and Drive, which is the cloud storage platform connected with Gsuite. You get 24/7 phone and email support, Gsuite Sync with Microsoft Outlook, so that if you have Outlook, you can link the two. You get additional security options like two-step authentication and single sign-on, and administrative controls for user accounts. Those administrative controls are probably the most important factor. Basically, if you have an employee that leaves the firm, especially in the event of a dissatisfied employee leaving the firm, if you have to let someone go, if you don't have those administrative controls, they can take all that information with them. If you have the administrative controls, you can lock them out of that account so that they can't keep all of the data. So I wish I included this in the materials, but I think I noticed it after I uploaded them. But a couple days ago, a report came out that detailed all of the different security breaches at firms across the country, especially in states where they have mandatory reporting rules for attorneys. Like if your firm gets breached, you have to notify someone. And a lot of the cases throughout the country where data was compromised had to do with disgruntled former employees leaving and somehow compromising the data. So those administrative controls are a really big factor. Additionally, Gmail and Gsuite can be HIPAA compliant, but you have to sign a business associate amendment with Google to activate the security level. So just because you're using Gsuite doesn't automatically mean that you're HIPAA compliant. So that's just something to note. Basically, everything that we're going to talk about today, all of the tips apply to both the free and paid versions of Gmail. I'm pretty sure that there's maybe 1 or 2 times in the materials where I note that it works differently between the two, but I think everything today is largely available in the free version. However, for attorneys, if you're using it for anything other than personal use, I always recommend that you go with the paid version because the security is important. Google's business is data, which makes me not really inclined to trust them. I use Gmail for personal use, so you just need to be aware that these companies want your data, and so they have motivation to track what you're doing. And so the paid version is a little bit more secure. So if you're using this for anything related to clients, I definitely recommend that you use the paid version. Again, that's kind of outside of a lot of what we're talking about today. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the user experience necessarily, but it feels important enough for me to mention. All right, so let's get into the tips. First off, you want to always be sure that you're using the most recent version of Gmail. The rollout process for new features in Gmail isn't totally consistent though. Some features just appear automatically. Some features appear in Gmail first, then in Gsuite later, or vice versa. If a more robust update is available, you might have the option to activate it or try it out, which is what you see in this screenshot. To check if a new version is available for you to try out, go to the settings icon. If a new version is there, you'll see an option to try the new Gmail. If you don't see that option, you're as up to date as you're able to control. I also want to note real quickly that as we go through these slides, I'm largely just going to stay within the PowerPoint that I created that includes the screenshots. If there is something that you're really dying to see me actually act out in Gmail, let me know, send me an email, and we can do that at the end. It's just easier to stay within the PowerPoint than jump back and forth, but I'm happy to do that at the end. You can control how densely text appears on your screen in Gmail. To change this, go to Settings and Display Density and select the option you prefer. Note that the default option is the only one that displays the attachments contained in an email thread. If you look at the picture on the right of this slide, you can see the little, it's like ovals at the bottom of an email that have, it's the Google Docs symbol, Google Sheets, etc. Those are attachments included in that email. I really like this feature personally, and that's why I am inclined to stay with the default view personally. It's very convenient. It allows you to access attachments without opening the whole thread and searching for when exactly it was sent. But you can also switch between what they call the comfortable and compact views. And if you go to that display density menu, you can switch back and forth between them and see what you prefer. Your Gmail doesn't have to be set on a plain white screen. To change your theme to something more playful or colorful, select Settings and Themes. Not all options are as busy as the ones displayed on this slide. These are all pretty, there's a lot going on with all of them, and it might not be as aesthetically pleasing as you like. But you can find a nice middle ground between professional and bland. You can also use personal photos if you just click My Photos at the bottom left corner there. They have a lot of options where it's like, instead of just a white screen, different colors. So it's a way to add a little bit of personality to it so it doesn't feel so sterile. Gmail now has an array of features located in the right column of the screen. That's this bar right here. The far right is a collapsible column that features integrations with Calendar, Keep, and Tasks, all tools automatically available to Gmail users. You can see what the calendar integration looks like when you click on it here. So that's the little calendar icon along the side. And then when you do that, it expands to the photo on the left. On the next slide, I'll show you what the Keep and Tasks look like when that column is expanded. Then to recollapse it, just click the X in the top right corner of the column that expands. The information to the left of the collapsible column is also handy. This keeps a log of all your recent Hangout sessions, which is the Google term for video calls, like Skype sessions. You can also send a message using GChat, which is essentially just instant messenger. by clicking the plus sign icon next to your user photo right there. So it's just a convenient way to connect with people. So this is the notes, which is what Google calls keep, and the task functionality. I believe that Google, the task feature is newer in Google, and I believe that they are, it's not done. I believe that they're trying to do more to make it a little bit more functional, but if you use to-do lists and you really like the idea of including that right in the Gmail interface, that's a great way to do it. The notes function is essentially just like the sticky notes or like the notes app on an iPhone. If you have multiple Gmail accounts, you don't need to sign in and out to access one at a time. That's a newer feature and a pretty nice feature. As somebody who definitely does have more than one Gmail account for different purposes. On the desktop, using Chrome, Firefox, or Edge, you can sign into multiple accounts at once. Each can occupy a separate tab and remain signed in. To do this, select your user photo on the top right and select Add Account. To switch back and forth between accounts, click your photo again and select the desired account. You'll be able to access it without re-entering your password, and they'll be able to be open in different tabs of the same browser simultaneously. This process works similarly on the mobile version as well. Your dots don't matter. This is something that I found out recently and I found really interesting. Gmail ignores periods in your email address. So your name at gmail.com is the same as your .name at gmail.com or even y.o.u.r, etc. They all go to the same person. This feature might seem useless, but it reduces the need for perfection when taking someone's email address. I am somebody who my Gmail address is my name, but separated with periods and my middle initial. And I always kind of worry if it's loud and I'm trying to communicate that to somebody that they're going to miss the dots. It doesn't matter. So that's a nice feature. Also, you can still, I saw this recommended on a website and I thought it was an interesting idea. You can still see the pattern a sender uses to send you an email. So if they miss a period, you can see that. So it's a great trick for signing up for newsletters or sharing your email address. You can tell who's sold your name to spammers, for instance. And keeping with that trick, here's another secret. Gmail ignores anything after a plus sign. So it's the same idea. If you want to keep track of what different newsletters are doing with your email address, you can sign up using your name or your email plus newsletters at gmail.com. And it goes to the same place as your name at gmail.com. Gmail filters do see what's after the plus. Thus, if you sign up for every newsletter with your name plus newsletter at gmail.com, you only need to filter on messages sent to that address rather than on every individual newsletter sender. So we'll talk more about filters in just a minute, but essentially what that is saying is that if you want to, you can establish a filter, which is kind of like a rule in Outlook, where you can say, by turning on a filter, you can direct all emails that fit a type or a rule. They all go to the same place. So you can create a label or a folder and redirect all those emails there automatically. Again, we'll talk about this more in a minute. But essentially what this is saying that if you want to do that with newsletters so that you can keep all of those out of your inbox, you can create a filter and a label to kind of and use that trick of signing up with your name, your email plus newsletter at gmail.com to redirect everything seamlessly. So it's a fun little hack. Gmail by default now sorts your mail into 3 categories. You have primary, social, and promotions. It sorts these automatically, but you kind of have to train it sometimes, and it shows up as 3 different tabs at the top of your inbox. Sometimes you have to train it. I have noticed it kind of comes in bursts, where all of a sudden, like, emails that always show up in my social folder or the promotions folder suddenly show up in primary. So it's a little wacky sometimes. But if that happens, all you have to do is drag and drop it into the correct folder, and it learns after a while. If you don't like that feature, you can turn it off. Hover over the word inbox on the top left and an arrow will appear. Click it to select between important first, unread first, starred first, or priority inbox. So the priority is the default, but you can also have it so that all of the unread emails go directly to the top, starred, important, etc. Those first priority inbox automatically filters incoming Gmail messages to place the most important messages up top, followed by starred emails and then everything underneath. Alternatively, if you want to just turn a tab off or on, go to Settings and Configure Inbox. Pass the cursor over each option to preview examples of messages that might end up in these tabs. So you have the option to, in addition to primary social promotions, you have the option to just turn one of those off. So you can use primary and promotions or primary and social, or you have the option to add tabs for updates and forums. So you can use whatever combination of those that you want. You just don't have the option to rename them, unfortunately. That is something that I would kind of like, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Note that if you do this, or if you change this, the categories only affect messages in the inbox, not emails that have already been archived. If you receive a spam email or something you'd no longer like to receive, you can flag it as spam. If you do this twice, similar messages will, in theory, always go to your spam folder. I say in theory just because it depends, like it tends to be tied to a sender. So just because you mark, if you get like a phishing email in your inbox, if you mark it as spam, that doesn't mean that every phishing email ever will always go to your spam folder. It just means that emails from that sender or emails that seem similar to that set off those red flags will go there. But you don't get a free pass. You still need to be a little bit on guard. To do this, with the email open, select the ellipsis menu at the top right corner and click Report Spam. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit more about labels and filters. Labels are essentially folders. Sometimes I mess up and use the term folders. I might have already done it. If I did, I apologize. It's essentially the same thing. The one key difference is that you can apply more than one label to an email. So label is just the term that Outlook uses that Gmail uses for folders. They function like folders with that only difference is that you can put one email in multiple places. To create a new label, select More from the left column menu below Inbox. Select Create New Label, and then once you have some labels, you can create sublabels by selecting Nest Label under. To delete or rename labels, just select Manage Labels. So to set a rule directing a certain type of email to a label automatically, that's when you use a filter. Filters are a useful way to redirect specific emails or types of emails away from your inbox and into a separate label or folder. The example at the link below in your materials has a user sending all emails containing the term New Yorker to a separate subscriptions label. This keeps them out of your inbox until you're ready to read them. I really like that idea. And of course, you don't have to use it for the New Yorker. This could be for anything. I just thought it was a good example that painted a pretty clear picture. But essentially, what it does is it takes all those emails. The New Yorker is a good example because it's always from the same sender. It's pretty clear the rule that you're going to set. And so this person has those emails going directly to a subscriptions folder so that it keeps them out of the inbox. If you are somebody who likes to operate at inbox zero, meaning that you have no emails in your inbox, I am like that. If you are like that, filters are going to be a good way for you to help maintain that. If you receive an email that you don't want to receive, so we talked about how you can flag it as spam, and how if you do that twice, it essentially blocks them. However, Gmail has also now given you the option to explicitly block a sender. once you block the person, any mail they send you from that email address in the future will go to the spam folder. So it's the same thing where it's not a perfect a perfect rule, but any email from that email address will go to the spam folder automatically. You can always unblock somebody through your settings menu, and users won't be notified or be able to tell that you blocked them. On desktop or mobile, select the ellipsis menu next to the reply button on a message and select block whoever. Any message from that email address will then be sent directly to your spam folder. The new confidential mode for Gmail seems like such a wonderful thing, and it allows you, in theory, to set an expiration date for the email and require a passcode for the recipient to open it. This is a newer feature that I was very intrigued by when I saw it, but my excitement faded a little bit when I read more about it. But just in case you do want to use it, to turn it on by click the confidential mode lock/clock icon at the bottom of a compose window. This also limits what the recipient can do, again, in theory, forwarding it on or downloading attachments. So this all sounds great, but it's not as wonderful as it sounds. Google can still read your messages, even when you secure them with the passcode. Expiring messages are still stored on Gmail's servers because they remain in the sender's sent folder. Additionally, if you elect to send a passcode via SMS, you have to reveal the recipient's private phone number to Google. So it's still handing a lot of information over to Google. It's not really strict end-to-end encryption. They really oversell it. For more information about the weaknesses of confidential mode, I included a link in the materials, but I do want to offer the disclaimer that while I think a lot of what they raise is valid and pretty objective criticism, it is published by a competitor called Proton Mail that is an email platform that is a little bit more secure. Again, it's not a complete fix, but it's worth checking out if you're interested. So all that being said, if confidential mode isn't actually that secure, what should you do if you need to send an email that contains sensitive or confidential information? Unfortunately, you'll need to seek the assistance of a paid service like Citrix, Identillect, or Trustify. These are all extensions that allow you to continue using your current email host, Gmail in this case, while implementing vastly more secure encryption and authentication measures. I included a link in the materials to all of those different companies, but I also included a link to a short 5-minute script that I recorded for a training module for the ARDC about this. I get a little bit more in depth about what email encryption really means and how it functions. So if you're interested in that, I recommend checking that out. It was 5 minutes to read, so it really won't take that long, but it's a little bit more in depth. So the takeaway about all that for now is just to know that if you're using Gmail, it is not as secure as it seems like it might be, so that if you're sending anything sensitive or confidential, you're going to need to integrate another platform. If you have Gmail, you also have the option to take advantage of calendars and tasks. We mentioned that already. But there's a really easy way to create a task or a reminder easily from within an email. Often you'll be in an email thread talking to somebody, and then somebody says, well, maybe we can meet on this day at this time. And you can just use that email to add the event to your calendar pretty seamlessly, or to tasks, whatever applies. Turning an email into a calendar event or a to-do list task is painless. Just with the message open, highlight some text that you want to appear in the event or task. Go to the ellipsis menu at the top and select either add to tasks or create event. And a lot of that information, including what you highlighted, will pre-populate in the event or the task. And so it's a really quick and easy way to do that. If you are one of the few individuals who isn't doing everything in their power to get fewer notifications, you have the option to get desktop notifications from Gmail. I'm just kidding about that. I think desktop notifications can be pretty convenient, especially if you have minimized your Gmail tab and you want to still know when emails come in. It's a good way to do that. I included a link in your materials for directions and screenshots to turn on desktop notifications. It's going to be something, it's not something that you do solely with Gmail. You're going to have to tweak the settings on your machine as well. So it's going to be different between like Mac users and PC users. So follow that link if you're interested. Undo send is a great and not new feature of Gmail, but it's not the complete dream that it sounds. First and foremost, you have a limited window during which you can recall an email after you've sent it. But you have to act fast, so you need to know how to use this feature in advance of actually having to use it. That's kind of a key piece of it. Undo send is now turned on by default and can't be deactivated, so that's good news. You can, however, adjust how long your window is during which you can use it. Go to the gear icon, settings, and then general, and select how long you want to be able to undo a sent message. You have the option to choose between 5, 10, 20, and 30 seconds. Undo send, you have 30 seconds maximum to recall an email. Once you send an email, this window appears in the bottom left corner that it has the undo button. And so a lot of times if you send an email and you send it to the wrong recipient or you include information that you didn't mean to, a lot of times you will notice it pretty immediately, hopefully. If it takes longer than 30 seconds, unfortunately, you're out of luck. So remember what I said about it not being a complete dream. Whenever you send a message, you'll see that black box and you can just click undo if you want to recall it. And then at the end of the window that you have it set to, that icon will go away. So I want to talk about the archive function a little bit. I think this is a really great tool for lawyers. When you delete an email, it stays in your trash folder for 30 days before being permanently deleted. The archive feature allows you to remove emails from your inbox and labels while retaining your access and ability to search for them later. So they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, but if you, 6 months on, if you need to reference something, you have the ability to search for it. While reading a message or selecting it from the inbox, click the archive button at the top. It's like a file box with the downward arrow, and the messages are stored out of sight by Gmail. And if you want to search for them later, all you have to do is type into the search bar at the top of the screen. Nudge is a newer feature in Gmail that reminds you to reply to important emails or to follow up on emails you've sent, but for which you haven't yet received a response. If you only want nudges for one of these occasions, you can specify that in your settings. This can either be convenient or annoying based on how you organize your email. Again, if you're an inbox 0 person, you might not like the sent messages showing back up. There is a platform called Boomerang that I've talked about it in a lot of my classes. I recommend it. And it essentially does this. And there are a couple different things that we're going to talk about that are features of Boomerang that Google has either ripped off or maybe they bought Boomerang. I'm not aware of anything like that, but it's a possibility. But it's essentially, I have a feeling Google just saw what they were doing and thought, that's a good idea. We should work that in. So if you're using Gmail right now and you're also using Boomerang, you can probably get rid of Boomerang, which the reason why you might want to do that is a security reason that we'll talk a little bit about at the end. But just know that you can maybe afford to get rid of that at this point because those features are integrated. For email threads that you don't want to be a part of, but don't want to awkwardly request to be removed from, you can simply hit the mute button. This is a great tool. The thread will seemingly disappear, but it remains in the archive even as new messages come in. So again, you can search it later if you need to. You won't see any message in the thread again unless you're the direct recipient or you search for it. In your inbox, to do that, click the selection box to the left of the thread in question meaning that little box where a check mark appears if you select it. Click the ellipsis icon towards the top and select mute. Alternatively, if you just want to mute a discussion for a set amount of time, hover over the email or thread in your inbox on the desktop. On the far right, you'll see icons to quickly archive, delete, mark as read, or snooze a message. If you click snooze, the message disappears from the inbox and comes back after the length of time that you specify. So this one is for all of the Outlook lovers out there. Outlook and many other desktop email apps offer a preview of the message. You click the message in a list on the left and see it in another pane of the window on the right. If you want to bring this view with you into Gmail, turn it on by simply selecting the icon in the top right corner above your inbox next to the settings gear icon. It looks like an outline of what the preview pane looks like. You can toggle back and forth between views using that button, so it's not much of a commitment. You can toggle back and forth. Smart Reply is a newer feature of Gmail that prepares 3 short, probably appropriate responses to messages that you receive. A single tap on the offered reply adds it to the response window where you can send it off or write more. So in this email that somebody received, the responses that it suggests are me too, yay, or yes. Sometimes they're a little bit more involved. I've seen one, I got an email from my bookstore earlier today that said that an order that I had placed has arrived and that I can come pick it up. And the suggested reply was like, awesome, I'll come by this afternoon or something like that. So they can be helpful. If you don't like them, if that creeps you out, you can turn it off by going to Settings, General, Smart Reply, and then Smart Reply off, and then scroll down to save your changes. Smart Compose, on the other hand, will suggest words or phrases to use as you type an email. If you type, I hope you, for example, you could see "are well" appear in grayed out text. If that's what you meant to say, hit the tab button, and Gmail will automatically insert "are well" into your email. If not, just keep typing and the suggestion will disappear. Again, if you think that's creepy and you want to turn it off, go to Settings, General, Smart Reply, Smart Compose, and then Writing Suggestions off, and scroll down to save your changes. If you find yourself sending the same email repeatedly, canned responses can save you time. Canned responses is the Gmail term for essentially just templates. So you would create a new email and type up a canned response, click the ellipsis in the lower right corner of the message and select canned responses. Here you can save the message you just typed as a canned response or apply an already saved canned response to the current window. If you rewrite the canned reply, you can resave it with the same name for future use. Maybe you find yourself answering the same client questions over and over again in an email. You can set up a canned response. The use case that I thought of this for, and I can't use it because unfortunately the email that it would apply to isn't set up in Gmail. But we have the CLE inbox here at the CBA, and we get a lot of help requests, a lot of times from people who they're locked out of their CBA account. And I send the same email at least 3 times a day that just says, I reset your account, your password is now whatever. We recommend that you change it. Maybe you've received one of these responses from me. But I was like, oh, that would be a good time to use one of these. So just an example. All right, here's another boomerang feature, the schedule send option. If you've ever found yourself replying to an email at 2 a.m., wishing that you could wait to actually send it until the following morning without forgetting about it, this is a good tool for you. Schedule send saves you from this problem and allows you to schedule an email to send at a later time or even a later date. To use it, simply click the drop-down menu next to the send button in an email, select schedule send, and specify when you would like to send it. Now we're going to talk about the security issue that I mentioned about with Boomerang. There's a vast array of apps that you can connect with your Gmail account, from practice or project management platform integrations to less broad communication apps. Some of these are very worthwhile, especially something like your practice management software. That's going to be a good time to add that integration. But many are useless and require an unreasonable amount of data to use, meaning access to your email, contents, and contacts. Some of these apps will actually even look through your emails while developing new features. Always read the terms of service before you hand over your information, and do research about how the app is going to use your data. In keeping with that, you should keep track of what apps have access to your email. To do this, go to myaccount.google.com and click Security. Under Apps with Account Access, click Manage Third-Party Access to disconnect any apps that you don't need. I recommend that you do that periodically. It's something that I do every now and then, maybe oh, my computer is frozen. There we go. I included a link in the materials to a reference about an email lawsuit, just a lawsuit, not an email lawsuit, that was initiated because UnrollMe was providing its parent company, Slice Technologies, with access to UnrollMe users' inboxes for purposes of collecting data from electronic purchase receipts for market research, failing to disclose those practices, all while representing that they would not, in fact, access the private emails of their users. So this UnrollMe was an app that I was signed up for it at some point. It offers services to minimize the clutter of subscription emails by helping users unsubscribe from unwanted email addresses, and aggregating the remaining email and messages into one daily email. So it sounds great. It cuts back on clutter a lot. However, in order to provide these personal email management services, it requires users to provide them with full access to their email accounts, which is common. It's something that Boomerang does too, which is why I mentioned that earlier. They then provided that parent company with access to the email messages, which then they scanned to extract data from consumer electronic receipts. The data was anonymized and packaged into market research reports that were sold to other businesses. But during the enrollment process, some users refused to grant access to their email accounts. And when they did that, UnrollMe would send them follow-up emails, which included false and deceptive statements concerning email access in an attempt to procure their business. So they would say things like, "Don't worry, we won't touch your personal stuff," or "We are not able to see the content of your emails, and the only emails we filter are subscription-based emails." So that's where the lawsuit came into play, because that was just not true. So the takeaway from all this is that these extensions and add-ons can be really great. Be careful. Be careful with what information you're giving away. And keep track of what the company in question is doing with your data. Again, if it's like a Clio integration or like practice management software or even DocuSign, something like that, it's probably more reasonable to give them that access, but just something to keep in mind. Rethink sending that picture. When you get an email with an embedded image, it's typically like a web page, meaning the image loads from the source, but not on Gmail. In 2013, Gmail began caching all of the images that go through its system, so they actually store that on their servers. When you load an image in a Gmail email, it's coming from Google's servers. So in theory, that makes it harder for scammers to insert malware into emailed images, but that's not always the case. And obviously that's a concern if you are sending images that might be sensitive or confidential for any reason. So you have some ability to turn this off, but not full ability. You can set it, and instructions are in the materials, but you can set it so that Gmail will ask before displaying external images. This will help messages load faster, But if you're the one sending emails with images attached, it won't stop Google from caching them. So if your images are confidential and you don't want them on Google's servers for whatever reason, find another way to send them, like the encryption platforms that we talked about a few slides ago. You also want to back up your email. You really shouldn't trust Google or any email platform to always save all of your important messages, contacts, attachments, etc. Thankfully, there's a service called Google Takeout that lets users download their entire Gmail data set, which you can view later with an email client like Thunderbird. So if you don't have to pull your entire mailbox, you can specify like certain labels and kind of cherry pick what you want to take, or you can just take the whole thing so that there's a backup available. And I included instructions in the materials to actually do that. One last thing that I want to mention that isn't really strictly related to Gmail, but it's related to everything that we're talking about. Never sign into your email while using a public Wi-Fi connection. Really, I don't recommend using public Wi-Fi connections, period. If you absolutely have to use a public connection, like if you're at the airport or something, use a VPN. So essentially what a VPN does, and again, this is like a whole separate class. I've taught classes specifically about VPNs, and there's a link into the material to that actually. But a VPN essentially, you log on, you connect to the internet using that public Wi-Fi setting, and then you turn on the VPN, and it encrypts everything that you do. So it basically just allows you to take advantage of that public Wi-Fi in a safe way. VPNs are usually something, they're always something, if they're a good VPN, you have to pay for it. So that nobody likes to hear that they have to pay for more things. But it's the unfortunate reality. If you're doing anything related to clients or really anything work related, needs to not be on a public connection. So that is all I have for you today. If you have questions right now, I'm happy to take them. You can also submit them and I will answer them. I will keep this computer open for a few minutes afterwards, but I do need to pack up and go back upstairs. So if I miss an email there, please feel free to send it to my email on the screen. It's just ahaag@chicagobar.org. And my number is 312-554-2059 if you want to talk further about anything that we talked about today, or if you have any other unrelated questions. I'm a resource and always around to help. So thank you very much.